That sort of reaction is the more typical reaction from the extreme of a party to a moderate. But again, we're just talking about enhanced background checks for all gun buyers under 21, funding for states to implement red flag laws, not creating the laws, not requiring them, just additional funding for states to do so, if they choose. But they actually put language in the party platform condemning Cornyn and the 9 other GOP senators who agreed to the theoretical deal, which isn't even on paper. Whereas all gun control is a violation of the Second Amendment and our God-given rights, we reject the so-called bipartisan gun agreement and we rebuke Senator John Cornyn. So where does all this lead? What's the end game? Well, the Texas Republican Party spelled that out too. Quote, Texas retains the right to secede from the United States, and the Texas legislature should be called upon to pass a referendum consistent thereto. Secession. We're really talking about secession, not by 1 or 2 people. That was voted in. Let me be clear. So many sane Republicans came out and denounced the attacks on Crenshaw, and many others have condemned the Texas GOP. But it's a reminder of how tough it is right now for the political moderates trying to bring back the party. Joining me now is Jason Cabel Roe. He's a Republican strategist based in Michigan. Jason, thanks very much for coming on the show. Appreciate it. All right, so Thanks. What do we make of this, of what's happening in Texas? Is this just unique to Texas, or is this something of a more national issue?
Well, I mean, Texas is Texas, but it is a national issue. And I think what is ironic in all of this is Texas is governed by some of the most conservative laws, particularly when it comes to guns and abortion, of any state in the union. And so it's kind of surprising to see this level of friction between the grassroots and the party leadership. But it's been building for some time. You may remember that former Florida Congressman Alan West, who was the chairman of the Texas Republican Party, was openly talking about challenging the governor in the primary in this election. He opted not to do that. In every state, you're seeing friction between the grassroots and party leadership and the elected leadership. But I think it's important to remember that a lot of the party regulars that were, leading the party and probably represented a majority of the delegates to these conventions 5 or 6 years ago have been pushed out by Trump loyalists, and a lot of them weren't politically active before, maybe not even Republicans before. And so you have a new breed of activists that is very angry at the direction of the country. And since they didn't kind of come up through the ranks like many of the regulars have, they're taking a much more aggressive approach.
And you hear a lot of people on the right say, it's time to stop talking about the past. It's time to stop talking about 2020 election. And, there's a point to that. And yet here you have the Texas Republicans again bringing the issue to the forefront again, as opposed to saying, let's move on, let's look forward, let's talk about the economy, let's talk about inflation, let's talk about these other issues. They're again talking about the 2020 election.
Well, and you didn't have a problem in Texas.
Right.
We had issues and conversations about what happened in Arizona, in Michigan, in Georgia, in Pennsylvania, not Texas. You saw this in Florida as well, where activists were trying to force the Florida Republican Party to push for forensic audits in a state that Donald Trump won. So it is. I think we've got our feet stuck in the past on this, and there's nothing that's going to happen between now and November as it relates to 2020. And I think in some cases there have been remedies put in place legally in some of the states where those questions are. But, the big problem for Republicans is the more time we spend talking about this is the less that we're talking about issues that we have very significant advantages and an opportunity to reach beyond Republicans.
Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.